Hundreds of young Indians standing in the June heat at Jantar Mantar, the same ground where Gandhi's followers once sat, where Anna Hazare fasted, where the country has come to be heard for decades. Except this time, they were wearing cockroach masks, not as a joke, but as a statement. A few weeks before this rally, India's Chief Justice was in the middle of a routine court hearing when he said something that was never meant to travel so far.
There are already parasites in society. You attack you people, you attack the system.
He compared unemployed young people, the ones who become activists, journalists, RTI filers, to cockroaches.
So there are youngsters like cockroaches. They don't get any employment, they don't have any place in profession. Some of them become media, some of them become social media, some have become RTI activists, some have become another activists, and they start attacking everyone.
Parasites, he called them. People who had no real place in the system, so spent their lives attacking it. He said he was misunderstood. But one 30-year-old man named Abhijit Dipke, a political strategist and student, heard it differently. The very next day, he announced a political party for the cockroaches, the CJP, Cockroach Janta Party. A direct play on the ruling BJP's name. Their eligibility criteria was people who are unemployed, lazy, chronically online, and are able to run professionally. Within 3 weeks, they had 20 million Instagram followers, more than most political parties that have been running actual campaigns for decades. And that's funny until it is not, because behind these masks and the memes and the satire is something that this country has been refusing to look at directly for years. A system that has been stealing the future of its own students, one leaked examination, paper at a time. That is this story. India runs one of the largest centralized examination systems on earth. NEET for medicine, JEE for engineering, State Recruitment Board for government jobs. These exams are not just tests for the majority of young Indians, especially those outside the big cities. They are the only door, the single mechanism through which a family from a small town believes it can change its situation. You grow up knowing this, your parents arrange lives around it. Some take loans, some will sell land. You give ears to it, and you walk into that exam hall carrying not just your own hope, but your family's entire bet on the future. In the last 2 decades, India has documented at least 148 major cases of exam irregularities, paper leaks, result manipulation, proxy impersonation, OMR sheet tampering. Together, they affect an estimate 10 crore students. 10 crore, more than the entire population of Germany. And it is not slowing down. Just this year, NEET, the National Medical Entrance Exam that 22 lakh students had prepared for, was cancelled hours before it began. Intelligence suggested that a paper had leaked at a printing facility in Jaipur. The students went home, a probe was ordered. It was the 18th examination fraud that was handed to CBI since 2015. But here is the number that we should look at every front page, but somehow it never came. Across 45 of the largest cases where over 1 lakh students were affected each time, the total number of convictions across those years and all those investigations were only 2. Not 200, not 20, but only 2. And here is the mechanism or the machine actually works. The paper leaks, the student go home, a probe is announced, the news cycle moves on, new dates are issued, and the student who spent years preparing for the exam, who took loan, who gave up weddings, childhood, for that one shot are told to sit for the examination next year again. The machine doesn't break, it resets. The students carry the cost. The system carries nothing. Now think about what it does to meritocracy. The core idea that India sold to every first generation learner in every small town. The idea that if you're smart enough and work hard enough, the system will reward you fairly. Paper leaks just don't cancel an exam, they cancel an idea. They tell an entire generation that the game was never really about merit. It was always about who knew whom, who paid whom, and who got the paper the night before. This is not a bureaucratic failure. This is a civilizational one. And then there is a cost we refuse to count. There are students who didn't sit the exam again, not because they gave up, because they could not. Young people who came home after a leak to families who had bet everything on them and simply had nothing left to give it to them. Some of them didn't survive the aftermath, not the exam, but the aftermath. The number has no official tracking mechanism, it doesn't make it to the CBI filings, it will never be a part of any ministry's annual report, but it is the most honest measure of what this system has actually cost, and the fact that we don't count it tells you everything about how seriously the system takes the people inside it. Every generation in India has been failed by some institution. Corruption, joblessness, broken infrastructure. None of this is new. What is new is who is responding to it and how this generation, the 20-year-old something standing in cockroach masks at Jantar Mantar, is the first one that grew up entirely online. They never have known a world without internet. They fact check in real time. They see hypocrisy at the speed of a screenshot. They are by temperament and by training less willing to quietly absorb an injustice and more willing to name it publicly. When the Chief Justice make a remark in the court, previous generation might have fumed privately or might have written a letter to an editor. This generation turned it into 20 million followers in 3 weeks and a rally in Delhi with national media coverage. This is a new kind of political fluency, and India is not alone in watching this. In Bangladesh in 2024, student-led protests toppled a government that had been in power for 15 years. Young people, many of them students, angry about discriminatory job quota policies, took it to the streets in the numbers that the establishment genuinely did not anticipate. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled the country. In Nepal and Sri Lanka, similar patterns played out: economic mismanagement, institutional failures, youth-led public rage, and governments scrambling to respond. The common thread is not that the youth were radical. The common thread is that they had run out of patience with systems that kept promising reform and kept delivering the same thing: broken institutions, unaccountable officials, and a political class that seemed genuinely confused, that everyone was angry. India's youth is watching all of this and they were drawing conclusions. The CJP is not a political party in any functional sense, but it is a signal, and signals matter, especially when 36 crore people between the age of 15 to 29 are the ones sending it. When the Chief Justice said cockroach, he meant it as an insult.
उन्होंने हमें कॉकरोच कहा। हाँ मैं हूँ कॉकरोच।
A descriptor for people who are marginal, low, living in the cracks of the system that has no real place for them. People who were in the framing, a nuisance. What he didn't calculate is what happens when people who have been marginalized long enough hear an insult and recognize themselves in it. Not with shame, but with something closer to dark pride. Because here is the thing about cockroach. It has survived every mass extinction on record. It outlasted the asteroid that killed dinosaurs. It adapts to almost any environment. It cannot be permanently eliminated, and crucially, it does not need anyone's permission or approval to survive. When Dipke launched the CJP with the slogan "Voice of the Lazy and Unemployed," he was being satirical, but he was also doing something more precise. He was giving language to a feeling that millions of young Indians had, but no respectable political party was willing to acknowledge. The feeling of being dismissed, being told your struggles are your own fault, of being compared to pests by the people who are supposed to protect your rights. The masks at the Jantar Mantar were not costumes. They were arguing. They were speaking something like, "You called us cockroaches, fine. Now look how many of us are here, and watch how hard we are to get rid of." When Dipke walked out of the airport to lead the rally, he was holding one book, Ambedkar's autobiography. That image was not random. It was a message to a very specific audience, the people for whom Ambedkar represents the promise that a constitution made to those the system had always excluded. The people are still waiting to collect on that promise. The crowd understood it immediately. They did not need to be explained. And that is how you know something has moved beyond a meme. When symbols start carrying weight that the creator did not need to add. When the audience fills in the meaning themselves, you are no longer watching it as a joke, you are watching a movement find its vocabulary within weeks. What started as a parody account had street presence, national media coverage, police barricades, and a riot gear. Not because it was dangerous, because what it represented was dangerous. The possibility that patience, the quality India has always asked its poor and its young to have an unlimited supply, was finally running out. This is not about one exam, it is not about one minister. It is not really about that paper leak also, as catastrophic as those are. It is about the systematic dismantling of the only belief system that held the social contract together for millions of Indian families, the belief that education effort and patience would eventually be rewarded. Earlier this year, Azim Premji University released its State of Working India report. The findings were striking in a way that most commentary underplayed. 2/3 of unemployed young Indians between 20 and 29 are graduates, not dropouts, but graduates. People who did everything the system had asked for. The share of degree holders among the unemployed has climbed from 46% in 2017 to 67% in 2023, which means the more educated you are in India today, the more likely you are to be unemployed. Less than half of all graduates have any meaningful employment. Only 6.7% have permanent salaried jobs. For young women under 25, unemployment approaches 40%. So here is the deal India has been quietly offering its young people without ever saying so out loud. Study hard, get a degree, spend years of your life and your family savings preparing for an exam, and then if the paper doesn't leak, if you are among the lucky ones who actually gets to sit and clear it, you may still find that the job you were preparing for doesn't exist, or that it pays less than the coaching fee you had borrowed to afford it. This is not a broken promise. A broken promise implies an accident. This is a recurring promise. It runs on a schedule. And behind the leaks and the unemployment is an entire ecosystem feeding off the anxiety this system produces. India's private coaching industry is worth over $1 billion. It exists because public education is inadequate, and the stakes of these centralized exams are so catastrophic that the families feel that they have no choice but to pay often the amount they cannot afford. For coaching institutes that promise an edge, places like Kota have become a factory. Towns for exam preparation where teenagers leave home at 16 and live in hostels under relentless pressure with measurable consequences for their mental health. The system produces the anxiety, the coaching mafia monetizes the anxiety, and when the paper leaks, both the students and coaching fee are gone. This is not dysfunction, it is a machine running exactly as its incentives designed it to run. And then there is the trust deficit, the most corrosive consequence of all. Because once a generation stops trusting its institution, you cannot win that trust back with a press conference. You cannot win it back with a probe. You cannot win it back with a conviction. Though two conviction in 2 decades suggest that it isn't a problem anyone is losing sleep over. Trust, once broken at this scale, produces a particular kind of citizen who is not loyal to the system, not invested in its success, and is not inclined to give it to the benefit of doubt. A citizen who, when an insult is thrown at them by the Chief Justice, does not write a formal response. They make a meme, they build a party, they put on a mask and show up. The rise of movements like the CJP is inseparable from the rise of this kind of political disillusionment. When traditional channels fail you, when the ballot doesn't produce change, when petitions are ignored, when protests are criminalized, new channels emerge. Memes becomes movements, Instagram pages become political parties, and 20 million followers in 3 weeks become the story. It is worth being honest about both sides of this. The anger that the CJP represents is legitimate. It is not a debatable point. 148 documented cases of the exam irregularities, 2 convictions, a system that has repeatedly failed its most vulnerable students and suffered no meaningful consequences. Young people who have every reason to be furious have every right to express that fury. But legitimate anger and productive action are not the same thing. The risk with the movements built on satire and social media momentum is that they can consume themselves. Rage is a powerful fuel but a poor navigation system. The CJP has an aesthetic and an audience, but it does not yet have a program, a clear specific set of demands and a strategy for achieving them. Without that, the energy will go away and the system, which has survived much larger disruption, simply waits. There is also a risk of politicization, not in the sense that politics is wrong, but in the sense that genuine grievances can be captured by existing political actors who care more about using the anger than resolving the problem that caused it. Every major protest in India's recent history has seen this dynamic play out. The movement gets absorbed, the grievances remains, and then there is a harder question about social media's role. The CJP had 20 million Instagram followers in 3 weeks. The rally in Delhi drew hundreds real, committed people, but a much smaller number than the online scale might suggest. The gap is not a failure, it is a reminder that virality and movement building are different disciplines. One spread fast, the other requires sustained organization, local presence, and the willingness to work slowly on things that don't trend. None of this invalidates the anger, it just says that anger to change things need architecture. So what does fixing this look like? The first thing is obvious, even if it is not easy, the exam system needs an independent oversight. The NTA, National Testing Agency, was supposed to be that. Instead, it became another institution with inadequate accountability and, as 18 CBI investigations suggest, inadequate security as well. An independent exam regulatory authority with real enforcement powers, transparent audit mechanisms, and consequences for failure is not a radical demand. It is minimum that a functioning state can owe it to students. The second thing is harder. India needs to decouple life outcomes from single point examinations. The entire incentive structure that makes paper leak profitable is that it gives one exam the power to decide a person's entire future. Needs to be redesigned. Multiple pathways, multiple opportunities, genuine recognition of diverse skills. This is not a new idea. It has been in the policy documents for decades. The question is whether the political will to implement exists or not. Third, and most urgently, job creation that matches the education being produced. India is generating degree holders at a historic scale. It is not generating permanent quality employment at anywhere near that scale. That gap between the credential and the opportunity is the structural condition that makes everything else worse. Coaching fees, migration, mental health crisis, protest movements, they are all downstream of that one failure. And fourth, perhaps the most important and the least discussed, stop dismissing. The Chief Justice comment was just not only offensive, it was strategically foolish. A country that responds to its unemployed youth by calling them parasites is not going to motivate them towards productivity, it is going to motivate them towards something else entirely. The CJP is what that something else looks like, when it is still very good humored. The thing about cockroaches as a metaphor is that they do not need your validation. They have survived without it for 300 million years. But a country needs its young people to be more than survivors. It needs them to be builders. And you don't build with people, you have decided to treat as insects.